Dear Diary, I spent all of last night putting out my intentional-unintentional forest fire. After a few minutes of staring at the pretty flames, a bear came up to me and told me that fire was dangerous and bad for the trees. I told him that he was a bear and couldn't talk. He responded that he was only there because of the colorful berries I had been snacking on earlier. He followed this up by floating around my head, squealing at me to consume the plant babies. A night full of berries and water buckets later, the fire was out, which seemed to appease the forest animals. They spun in circles, screaming that dogs are delicious before disappearing in a puff of exhaust fumes. When I got back to the cabin, morning had arrived. According to Sally, the ghost dogs of Lucky Cabron were a nightly occurrence. Despite this, they seemed to be a one-and-done deal, which is a pity given how much effort I spent on those traps. When I went inside, the rising of the sun was greeted by a little wooden Rottweiler coming out of the cuckoo clock and saying, "Knock, knock, it's dog o'clock," 4 times. Well, 1 time. Every subsequent time it was cut off by the dogs getting ripped out of their seatings. To my left I heard a click and wiggle. Once again, wanton destruction had led me to the correct path. I got up off the floor and nursed the bump on my head, yet another to add to the collection. I looked around and saw a shelf holding several whiskey barrels with the word soda hastily scrawled on the side. It was Prohibition times, you could never be too careful. Nevertheless, I got the inkling that famous mobster Licky Stallone might have had the words plausible deniability tattooed on his forearm. On my left was a hidden safe, but I couldn't figure out the combination, and was sick of using the same joke to justify my guessing the code. I boated over to see if the vessel of the thrall with the southern drawl had any power tools to make my job a little easier. She told me she would give it to me if I rearranged the drinks in the cooler, but when I went over there, the drinks were already in order. I turned around, somewhat perplexed, and told her I had finished, and she threw something at me. It was a pack of batteries. I asked her how this counted as a power tool. She said that that was the power, I was the tool. Her time will come. Having given up on the safe, I investigated the rest of the cellar. With just the right amount of pressure on the center of the wall between the kegs, I was able to open the doors to the speakeasy hidden behind. Hiding illegal contraband in the basement was one thing. Hiding his entire distribution platform nearby was another thing entirely. But to be fair, I wouldn't have even known it was there were it not for the suspicious crease in the concrete wall. The secretive bar had a gambling section, from which the roulette wheel called out to me, but I resisted the urge to bet it all on black. Last time I did that, I had to get it all back. Now I'm banned from the entire state of Nevada. Instead, I moved to pour me a glass of tomorrow's happiness, but the keg had long since run dry. Also the wall opened, so that's interesting. I assume these tunnels were dug for the express purpose of alcohol trafficking, because we're much too far north for it to be the work of sandworms. This view was confirmed by the broken-off path with mounted electric lights and the mosaics of Rottweilers. The dog thing had long since passed the point of obsession and ran headfirst into deification. It made me think to myself, if he truly worshipped these canines, is it possible that they were indeed immortal beings? That they weren't merely ghosts, but unkillable demigods with an unslakable thirst for blood? The thought lasted all of about 14 seconds before I went into the side room and saw the dogs in the cage, knowing that no matter how I cooked them, I wouldn't get the smooth tenderness that ectoplasmophores really put me off my appetite. I left them to ponder existence in their cage as I went back to the mosaic hallway and kicked in one of the walls. Before me stood a behemoth of copper and iron, like a portal to the Art Deco steampunk dimension. I thought to myself, this must be the long-lost treasure stash of sticky baloney that I had failed to mention but was integral to the plot. I threw open the door and subsequently drowned in the arsenic-laced waters. Good thing mortality is a myth, or that would have been a problem. I climbed down the ladder to the inner sanctum of the house. Gradually opening the door to preserve suspense, I saw a collection of 20 yellow trapezoidal prisms. Disappointed, I turned around to leave, but as I did so, I heard the tolling of a southern bell. Sure enough, I looked up and met the eyes of the gender-swapped Anton Chigurh. She was wielding a thigh bone as if it was some sort of credible threat. I grabbed one of the 20-pound bricks of solid metal behind me and whipped it broadside against her skull. I was out the door before she even hit the ground. She obviously wouldn't be too happy with me after that, so I gave her a few hours to cool off. Hours turned into days, turned into weeks, and when I finally opened the door to collect the valuable geometry, she didn't protest. Another vacation had, another villain foiled, another mystery solved by the great teenage detective Nancy Drew. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel to give me vindication for the hours I consistently waste on this mountain of bad decisions.